It seems that I was right when I said there'll be a media firestorm about this thing between Meghan and Harry and Piers Morgan, with today's headline saying that Piers Morgan has, quote, been slapped with complaints over gruesome and violent Harry and Meghan remarks, following comments made in a show on the 7th of February. But is this a slight exaggeration, or do the numbers really stack up? Let's take a closer look. Welcome back. So let's take a look at those numbers, shall we? If we look at the Ofcom website, it does indeed show that there were 95 complaints made about Piers Morgan Uncensored from the show that aired on the 7th of February 24. But also on the 9th of February, there are 164 complaints about This Morning and 122 complaints about People's Forum, the Prime Minister, on GB News. But are these numbers really out of the ordinary? Well, let's take a look at some other numbers. If we move to a single week from December last year, the 12th of December to the 18th of December, This Morning's show received over 1,000 complaints, and Piers Morgan Uncensored received 755 complaints. Even the Royal Variety Performance received 65 complaints, and Jeremy Vine received 53 complaints. So these numbers are not really out of the ordinary. But what if we compare them to a decision that Ofcom actually made following an investigation that it decided to carry out following a number of complaints? I say a number of complaints, I'll come back to that in a moment, but this is again in relation to comments made by Piers Morgan. So Ofcom does look into certain complaints where they feel there may be a need to do so, where there may be some level of harm and the complaints may be justified. So in doing so, it will consider lots of different things and balance the right of free speech against the harm potentially caused by comments made, and then it may decide to carry out an investigation. And investigate it did about a show that aired on the 8th of March 2021. You'll recall this as being the show on Good Morning Britain where Piers Morgan was discussing the interview between Harry and Meghan and Oprah Winfrey. And in respect of this show, Ofcom received more than 50,000 complaints, the majority of which, it says, were about the comments about mental health and suicide made by the lead presenter, Piers Morgan. The complaints suggested that these comments were harmful to the audience and highly offensive, and that the discussion on issues relating to race and racism in the programme were also highly offensive to some viewers. And in coming to its decision, Ofcom said that it addressed all of these aspects of the complaints in detail. And in detail indeed. This report was 97 pages long, although a lot of it was made up of the transcript. Ofcom describes this case as attracting significant publicity, igniting a public debate about freedom of expression, and generated a very high volume of complaints to Ofcom. It says, in coming to our decision, Ofcom assessed the programme in full, carefully considering the right to freedom of expression and the need to adequately protect audiences from harm and offence. Coming straight to the point, Ofcom found that this programme and Piers Morgan were not in breach of the broadcasting standards. Ofcom was careful to highlight that this was a finely balanced case, and in the particular circumstances, considering that the broadcaster provided adequate protection to viewers from potentially harmful and highly offensive statements about mental health and suicide, as there was a sufficient challenge to such statements, which meant that they were adequately contextualised. Ofcom said that they considered that the statements made in the programme about race and racism had the potential to be highly offensive to some viewers. However, in the particular circumstances of the case, they were sufficiently contextualised. Therefore, the decision was that the programme did not breach the Ofcom Broadcasting Code, and they set out reasons for it in this decision, which I will link in the description below. Coming to the comments made in the most recent show, about which complaints have now been filed with Ofcom, and without the need to repeat those comments here on this channel, it can be argued that Piers Morgan had couched and contextualised those comments in what he said. He said, "What would I do if one of my family, one of my siblings, has spent the last few years trashing my family on television? Trashed me, my wife, trashed my dad's wife, trashed my dad, and so on." Before going on to conclude that he meant those comments metaphorically, and what he meant was he would be utterly enraged. And so Ofcom may or may not conduct a full investigation about the programme and those comments, and they may or may not conclude that these comments breached the broadcasting standards. But referencing back once more to the decision made in that previous case by Ofcom, Ofcom was clear to say that the Ofcom Code is drafted and applied in accordance with Article 10 of the European Convention of Human Rights, that is, the right to the freedom of expression, which encompasses the right to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without unnecessary interference by a public authority. In that case, Ofcom said that it considered that the interview with Oprah Winfrey and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to be a highly anticipated moment of national and international interest and discussion. It was a major news story dominating headlines in both broadcast and print media in the UK, and was therefore likely to have been within an audience expectations that the revelations in the interview would be discussed during the programme. It said that it considered, given the seriousness of the issues and the allegations raised in the interview, it was legitimate for those to be discussed and questioned throughout the programme, in line with the broadcaster's and audience's right to the freedom of expression. And so coming back to the point here, whilst Piers Morgan and many others may be very bold in what they say and how they say it, Ofcom's previous decisions makes clear that they do uphold the freedom of expression, and those stories that are likely to be major news, both nationally and internationally, both in broadcast and print media, those who hold themselves out as public figures should expect to be discussed and questioned throughout those programs in accordance with the right to the freedom of expression. But how far does that go, and does it cover these comments that Piers Morgan has made? That is something we'll have to wait to see whether Ofcom picks up and investigates, or whether they decide against it. But let's just bear in mind that this programme has received 95 complaints as against the more than 50,000 complaints that were received in this previous case. But nonetheless, I hope you find that an interesting overview. Please do make sure you like this video and subscribe to spread me to a wider audience. And as always, thank you for watching.